welcome to this. And Arshak, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. My name is Arshak. I'm an activist. I was born in Armenia and I grew up in Russia, and now I study in Berlin. So it's kind of also not easy for me to introduce myself because I'm Armenian. I was born in Armenia. My family moved to Russia when I was 1 year old, and because of the first Karabakh war and economical situation in Armenia. And yeah, I started my activism as a climate activist and as a human rights activist. So obviously, I was against the Russian invasion of Ukraine from 2014, but I didn't know what to do. But when Russia started also a full-scale invasion in 2022, I spoke out against it and I did some anti-war activism. And then I had to flee. So yeah, I was tipped off my Russian citizenship, and now I'm Armenian citizen. I got it because I'm Armenian by ethnicity. So yeah, this is some kind of short introduction. I don't know. I'm a climate activist and many other things at the same time.
You can tell us a bit like you founded Fridays for Future Russia, right? Or like you were at least one of the people who associated themselves in Russia with Fridays for Future. Can you tell us a bit about how you started this and what motivated you to do this?
2019, I started protesting every Friday, and I was a student in Moscow Conservatory. I was a violinist, and yeah, before 2018, I actually didn't know much about the climate crisis or climate change. It was climate change back then, and yeah, I found out about the movement in Europe, like that was started by Greta, and I thought if they can do it, why cannot I do it? And then I was also learning more about climate, and I was quite surprised that no one really was talking about it in Russia. And like the context in Russia was quite different from Europe. Like in Europe, you had a lot of climate movements from the 90s, and in Russia, we had nothing. Like mostly people were joking about climate crisis, like that they would be growing bananas in Siberia or something like that, and the science behind it was denied by Russian propaganda media. So it was kind of a process of learning, and also yeah, since I was a minority in Russia, I was quite afraid to do any kind of activism. But also I felt that I had to do it because I was feeling myself that yeah, this is also my responsibility. And yeah, I started protesting every Friday, gave up my violin career, and this experience of activism, of grassroots activism, and organizing a movement changed me a lot. But also, like since then, a lot of things changed in my life, like many times. So yeah, kind of, it's a long story.
I mean, it's interesting. You already mentioned Greta, and Greta, similar to you, is a person who combines the fight against the climate crisis with the fight against war and genocide. How does this fight go together for you?
The war was something that affected my life from the very beginning, but yeah, also genocides, because basically this is something I started to think more about after what happened in Nagorno-Karabakh, like the genocide and total ethnic cleansing. Like I'm an Armenian. My great grandma survived the genocide in the like Western Armenia, which is today Eastern Turkey. Also, my grandparents they survived another silent genocide that happened in Nakhichevan. Like Nakhichevan and Nagorno-Karabakh were given to Azerbaijan by the Stalin decision under Turkish pressure, and like during the Soviet occupation times, like all indigenous Armenians have been deported from Nakhichevan. And that's why, like, basically the war in Nagorno-Karabakh started, but like Azerbaijan started pogroms against Armenians, and the Armenians felt that if they would stay part of Azerbaijan, like the same fate, yeah, the same will happen to them, and they started this referendum, and then Azerbaijan started the war, which lasted for 30 years, like until 2023, when all indigenous Armenians have been deported. I was speaking out about this since 2022, end of 2022, when the blockade started. Before I was speaking out about genocide, like occasionally, when on 24th of April, it's the day of remembrance of the genocide. But before, like I thought, okay, genocide is something that happened in the past. Like nothing can be done about it. I didn't think about the political dimensions of the genocide, that we cannot really return to Western Armenia, that is occupied until the day, that our rights are violated on the daily basis, basically. Uh, yeah, but yeah, I was speaking out about the blockade of Nagorno-Karabakh, the starvation. I had friends in Nagorno-Karabakh. I was following them, and I felt also betrayed by Europe. I was in Germany in 2022 after I had to flee from Russia, and it was kind of like we were speaking out that like Europe should stop buying fossil fuels from Russia, and they had this kind of embargo, yeah, which is not working perfectly, but still it was something. But then they have decided to sign a new gas deal with Azerbaijan while they were blockading indigenous Armenian population, which I felt was really hypocritical out of them. And I was kind of disappointed in Europe. I have never idealized Europe, but I like it was really something beyond. Because for us Armenians, what happened in Nagorno-Karabakh was started in it was a continuation of the Armenian genocide. Like after the genocide like ended, if it can end, after they deported all the Armenians, the 7th of October happened, and for a person who understands what a genocide is, who knew the history behind what was happening in Palestine, like of course I was learning more and more every day, but I knew that about the apartheid, about the blockade of Palestine. So yeah, I spoke out like from the very beginning, and then like everyone like forgot instantly what happened in Nagorno-Karabakh because something else was happening, and yeah, I don't know. And until today, Azerbaijan is looting the houses of indigenous Armenians and yeah, sending some settlers, and they are posting a lot of horrible content. And since then, I'm kind of trying to speak out about what happened there every day because I feel somehow that media they don't report about it, and I feel that I have to fill this gap. Like otherwise, no one is really speaking out about these issues, and yeah, people ignore it. I feel there is not enough of knowledge about it, and yeah, while it was happening, actually, Russia was depriving me of my only citizenship, and then because I spoke out about the war in Ukraine, and I was having actually a lot of interviews with the biggest German and the international media, and I was also talking about my activism, at the time, and I was talking about the blockade of Nagorno-Karabakh and how it was connected to me being raised in Russia. And somehow, like the media were reporting only about the repression against me as a Russian citizen and the privation of my citizenship, but not about what was happening in Nagorno-Karabakh. So, I can kind of see that this media in Europe, they don't really do their work quite well. And yeah, and since then I was speaking out about the genocide, also learning about my own identity and educating myself because, yeah, apparently genocide before the genocide is recognized it continues, and yeah, I feel that that's kind of my responsibility also as because I am an activist.
I was at a protest in September 2023 in Berlin, and I remember like the being kind of shocked at all of this because after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, and there was like the media was full of like trying to like condemning Russia for not upholding international law. The media was full of all of these kind of things, and as the double standards were so clear as well of how now suddenly Europe was making these gas deals with Azerbaijan, and this helped as a cover to cover this ethnic cleansing and genocide. I feel like this silence and this complicity is also ongoing in Western institutions. No, you already mentioned the Armenian genocide and how this is a continuity of the Armenian genocide. I'm not sure if everybody here knows so much about the Armenian genocide. Can you maybe give us a brief like summary of the Armenian genocide and how the situation in September 2023 and the blockade before, how they related to the Armenian genocide?
Armenia was divided between Russian Empire and Ottoman Empire, and today's Armenian Republic is Eastern Armenia that was back then occupied by Russian Empire. And Russia did a lot of horrible things to Armenians, but what happened in the Ottoman Empire, like in Western Armenia, was the genocide, and it was one of the first genocides of 20th century. 60% of Armenian population was massacred, and the rest they had to flee. They had been deported. And it actually didn't start in 1915, but it was the the date when like it escalated, like because the Armenian genocide also was happening throughout 19th century, and like it was part of colonization of Western Armenia and destruction of Armenian identity and assimilation of Armenian people by Ottoman Empire. And yeah, and since Azerbaijan, they are some kind of Turkic people, Azerbaijani is a state that was created by like a Russian empire, not like Russian, mainly Soviets, because these parts have been occupied by Russian empire before, and they needed some kind of rebranding. And yeah, Azerbaijan was created at the beginning of 20th century, and also Turkish Republic help Azeris to commit horrible crimes at the beginning of 20th century. For example, my grandfather's uncle died in Baku in 1920s. There were a lot of massacres against Armenians in Shushi, where a lot of journalists and politicians go now to today's Azerbaijan. They massacred like 20,000 people, and it was a huge massacre. And it's something that started long ago. And yeah, at some point, Azerbaijan was part, of Russian Empire, and Russia was kind of making them to fight against us and using them against us. And the same kind of happened during the blockade, because Russia was also involved. They had this kind of secret deals with Azerbaijan and Turkey. Russian peacekeepers did nothing to fulfill their obligations, and they kind of helped Azerbaijan to commit the genocide. So it's kind of a complicated history because like when a nation is located between two empires, like which was Ottoman Empire and Russian Empire, they are kind of it's quite natural that they are kind of trying to destroy your identity. And Russian Empire did a lot of terrible things to Armenian people. The Ottoman Empire committed the genocide, and after the genocide, actually, we had a republic, but also Russian, Soviets, and Turks, they started another war and divided Armenia once again. And even like the symbol of Armenian nation, the Ararat mountain, was given to Turkish Republic. So yeah, somehow like our lands had been given to other nations without our consent, and it was something that also happened to Nagorno-Karabakh and Nakhchivan. And yeah, and it's kind of colonial policies that are not really recognized, because when we talk about colonialism in Western world, people usually think that only Europeans can colonize, but it's not the case for our region. Russians are also colonizers. They have been colonizing Caucasus, Siberia, and that's why Russia is so huge. And then also Ottoman Empire was also a colonial empire, because Turks, they came from Central Asia. They conquered our lands, as they say, and then basically they were destroying Armenian identity for centuries, which culminated in the genocide. And until today, we cannot return to our indigenous lands in Western Armenia, and talking about genocides is illegal in Turkey. And when you talk with Turks about it, they say it didn't happen, but you deserved it. And then there is even they even don't deny that we are indigenous. They don't say that we didn't live there. They just say that we betrayed them, because Armenian people resisted to the genocide, which is kind of insane. Because resisting to genocide is a duty. And I'm an anti-military activist, obviously, but I believe in every nation right to self-defense when horrible crimes happen. And that's why I'm kind of an anti-war Russian activist, but I support Ukraine's right to self-defense. And I believe that it's very important that Europe is supporting Ukraine, but also I believe that there should be some kind of consistency in European policies. So yeah, about the genocide, when I actually study now international relations, and when you read in academia, mainly it's talk about only from the perspective of a tragedy and the genocide, but not from the political perspective of colonization and occupation of indigenous lands.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to ask you a bit about, I remember like in September 2023 was the culmination of the genocide in Artsakh, and like I think Armenians have been forcibly displaced after a long siege also. Like there was also famine. Genocide scholars for years were warning of the threat of imminent genocide. In October 2023, the Gaza genocide started. I wanted to ask you a bit about what parallels do you see and what maybe also what differences do you see?
Actually, I think what is happening in Gaza and what happened in Nagorno-Karabakh is very much connected. Azerbaijan is one of the main allies of Israel, and Israel provided about 70% of modern weapons that have been used in the war in 2020. And also in the genocide itself. And Azerbaijan provides about 40% of oil for the genocide to Israel, and that is obviously used in the genocide in Palestine. And also, like this idea that you can ethnically cleanse an indigenous population, deport basically entire indigenous population, and Armenians consisted majority of the population throughout like thousands of years. Uh, and then international society can just accept it, and kind of no one really speaks out about it. Yes, like that Armenians have the right to return what is happening to their property. Basically, the world just accepted that genocide can happen, and then they just continue their normal lives. And even like Azerbaijan hosted many international events afterwards, such as COP29, and they used it as a platform to greenwash the genocide. And these kind of authoritarian practices, they are inspiring each other, and same way as Armenian genocides somehow inspired the Holocaust in 20th century, and even like Hitler had this quote about who remembers Armenians, about annihilation of Armenians. And actually, Hitler like admired Atatürk, the like father of the Turkish nation that continued the Armenian genocide. So there are like a lot of parallels. One genocide obviously usually inspires other genocides, and then this idea that like you can destroy a nation, deport everyone, and then build some nice houses and put some few solar panels, and everything will be fine. Was kind of also is being also promoted by many people today. I remember when Trump was saying, "Oh, let's build a hotel in." Gaza and sent all like the indigenous population to some other countries. It reminded me of what is happening right now in Nagorno-Karabakh. Recently, Azerbaijan hosted like an event where a lot of heads of the states of Islamic nations visited Stepanakert. They call it Khan Kendi, and they were talking about like I think it was the president or prime minister of Pakistan. He was saying, "Oh, maybe you can give us a few apartments to me and to Erdogan." And basically, he meant that few apartments of like Armenians who have been deported. It's kind of something that is ignored. No one really reported about it, and kind of no one reports about like terror that is used against Armenians, like this kind of secret language of the genocide. For example, when this special operation of Azerbaijan started in September, a lot of Azerbaijani Telegram channels have been posting pictures of Armenian girls with threats of sexual violence, and the like sexual slavery was something that was very widespread after the Armenian genocide in 1915. So there are like millions of parallels, and it's actually shocking that the world ignores it. But I don't know. I'm kind of speaking out about this every day, but somehow I don't know. I don't see any like real powers behind us. And in this case, somehow with Palestinian cause, there is more knowledge on an international level about what is happening, but also there is more resistance from the Western powers. So this case is kind of different, but they are very also similar, because in Armenian case, it's more about geopolitics and that Europe needs more oil and gas from Azerbaijan, and in Palestinian case, it's more about the interest of like Israeli state, and like this Western colonialism concept of promoting their interest in the Middle East.
Thank you. I have some more questions, but I wanted to ask if anybody in the audience already has something that they want to share or ask. Maybe there's something already burning in your mind.
I think I would just say that, yeah, it's like as I said in the chat as well, like I studied in Germany and Ireland and like also like politics and global politics, and this is something that like basically never came up. Like I don't even really, yeah, remember it being mentioned somewhere. I mean, maybe it was and I didn't really pay attention as well, but like it's terrible and I'm so sorry that I don't know, this is going on. And yeah, it's just like crazy the lack of information about this in like, even in courses that like focused on like, like oppressed nations and global media and all this kind of stuff. It was never really a topic. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of speechless and shocked about how bad this is and how little like, yeah, responsibility the media or like the Western nations take there. And yeah, I want to learn how to how to change that. I don't know.
Point because Turkey is quite often portraying themselves as a victim of Western colonialism while they are part of NATO, while they have their own special operations and they occupy parts of Syria, while they are oppressing Kurdish population in Iraq and also in Turkey itself. And also during the genocide, Germany was actually involved in Armenian genocide. Tens of thousands of German soldiers were participating, and they knew about what was happening. And Turkey was ally of Germany during the First World War. And yeah, after the genocide, Germany was helping to the perpetrators of the genocide, or one of the organizers of the genocide, to hide in Germany before he was killed by one of the survivors of the genocide, actually in Berlin. And then this case of Sogo Monteirian, and when he killed Talat Pasha in Berlin, it was actually a huge case that inspired at some point the Raphael Lemkin, who coined the term of genocide, and he was then saying that how it's possible that one man can like organize massacres of more than 1 million people, and then we are kind of judging a person who killed this perpetrator. And yeah, then actually Togo Monteirian was found not guilty and just was deported from Germany. But I was reading some papers about it, and actually he was the German authorities, they didn't want to put him in jail because then they would have more attention to the genocide, and they didn't want to public to speak out about it, and that's why they just decided to deport him. It was not something they have done out of humanity, but rather like they wanted to people not to talk about the genocide. And yeah, and even today, I like the genocide in Nagorno-Karabakh happened just 2 years ago. Like last year, we had this 24th of April when we commemorate the Armenian genocide, and now probably two of Armenian genocides. But German politicians, they stayed completely silent. I tried to send an article and an interview with a genocide scholar to some German media. They didn't want to publish it. And then, the next day, a European politician visited Azerbaijan, and obviously it was some kind of diplomatical message that they don't mind of staying silent and complicit in the genocide. They don't really care. They have their own interests, and that's really horrible to see this kind of real politics when no one really cares about humanitarian values and about international law, and everything is just about economical interests.
Yeah, okay, crazy. And of course they say silent, but what is like Germany's like official excuse for being involved there? Or do they even like they have to have at some point it has to come up and they have to maybe explain why they get involved in this? Or
Germany recognized Armenian genocide in 2016, like 100 years later, but afterward they just recognized and did nothing. They participated in a genocide. They could have paid reparations, put pressure on Turkey to also recognize the genocide, because our main problems are with Turkey, and also they could put more pressure on Azerbaijan not to commit another genocide, but no, they don't really care, and they have their own problems. And I don't know. I think Christian Democrats are in the power right now, and we Armenians, we are the first Christian nation in the world. And in Nagorno-Karabakh, like a lot of churches have been destroyed, and in Nakhichevan, where my grandparents are from, like hundreds of medieval churches have been destroyed, and no one really speaks out about it. And we are like the first Christian nation, and no one really cares about even these kind of things. They just talk about it when they need to use it against like migrants. But yeah, they never care really about it, even like their own really so-called religion. I don't know. It's really kind of disappointing on many levels.
Yeah, I think like something you said is also very interesting, like that the person who killed this genocidal Ottoman officer who was involved in the Armenian genocide was released rather than trialed, because this created less of a scandal and it enabled the silence to continue, because otherwise it would have maybe scandalized the whole thing. And it's very interesting because like there's this silence around this genocide also now, and the ongoing threats also of Azerbaijan still towards like the Armenian state. You are trying with your social media presence also to scandalize this, no? And to kind of create this kind of like public awareness for this. I would love to hear a bit about your strategy for this. Like what is your social media strategy for kind of scandalizing and actually trying to get more people to care about this and to talk about this?
Yeah, just trying to learn more by myself and then trying to speak out on my social media, but also like social media, a platform that can be taken away from us. I had a platform on Twitter before it was bought by Elon Musk. And now if you don't pay, then no one really sees what you post. And then there's a lot of censorship on any kind of topics on this social media. So I'm kind of investing on myself, spending my time and for like mental health to speak out on these issues, arguing with Turkish people, with Azerbaijani people, and proving to the world that our we have the right to exist, and trying to, I don't know, uh, raise awareness about these issues. But yeah, I don't really have trust in social media, and then I don't really know what to do. I feel a bit lost, yes, because in Russia I was doing activism on the ground, and we have been organizing a movement. And in this case, it's kind of really hard to organize something. Because Armenian people, they are disappointed in humanity. They don't believe in anything. They think, yeah, the only way that we can stop this is, I don't know, a miracle. And then, like, Russia is trying to regain actually their control of Armenia and other, like, former colonies. And the situation is really scary. And yeah, Azerbaijan today, they also occupy even internationally recognized Armenian lands, and no one really speaks out about it. And they also threaten to the southern Armenian region. And as an Armenian citizen, if they will start a war, I will go to the war, and I believe in the rights for self-defense of any kind of people. So yeah, this situation is really kind of dangerous, and I don't really understand what to do, and that's why it's important for me to talk with people and try to build some kind of solidarity structures. And it was really important for me that some climate activists spoke out against what was happening during COP29 when Greta went to Armenia. It was very inspirational, but also I was really surprised that environmental NGOs or human rights organizations stayed silent, and I also felt betrayed. Like Amnesty wrote a report on human rights situation in Azerbaijan, and they did mention Armenians. And then Human Rights Watch also did like 80 pages report and nothing about Armenians. And Greenpeace, they stayed silent. So somehow I feel that these huge NGOs, they are somehow also complicit, and they always have some reasons to stay silent.
Yeah, I guess they focus more on Azerbaijan as a fossil state than a genocidal state, even though those are linked together, no? Yeah, it's kind of...
I don't really know. Sometimes the issue is, for example, Greenpeace has an office in Turkey, and if they would speak out about Armenians, their office could be threatened. But also, it's if they have these values and if they say we care about indigenous rights, then they have an office in like the state that was created by colonial power, and then they refuse to speak out about indigenous rights because they have some interest in the colonial state, which is also which contradicts to their own values. And I do not want to accept this.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Do you have anything you want to say or a question?
Thank you, Arshak, for sharing and informing us. I'm from Turkey, by the way, and I totally agree from what happened in Ottoman Empire and current situation, and how it's also kind of continuity of each other. because I'm also Kurdish in Turkey. I would like to ask you, yes, there is a conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan. I want to ask also in Azerbaijan, isn't there any kind of groups that against what their state is doing to Armenia?
The position in Azerbaijan is very small because it's a dictatorship, and in dictatorship, activism doesn't really work. And the propaganda machine of Azerbaijan, they basically Azerbaijani identity was built on the hatred towards Armenian people, and they had been using these mirror propaganda techniques and saying, "Oh, actually, you committed a genocide against us," and because Armenians resisted when they started the war, and yeah. So there are a few activists in Azerbaijan. Like recently, one of them was sentenced to 16 years in prison for talking to Armenians. And then also there is like some opposition to like the war against Armenia, but also these people, they somehow have excuses for what happened in Nagorno-Karabakh. So somehow this, yeah, I don't really trust to Azerbaijani activists, and also the same way I don't really trust to most of the Russian opposition people, because somehow they want to promote the interests of the majority of the population, which are Russians in Russia, and they don't talk about the rights of indigenous people. So these kind of issues are very much connected to the also culture of this kind of people. For example, colonization of Caucasus and many other places in Russia was part of Russian identity and Russian culture. And somehow, when we talk about Russian culture, we think about Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, Pushkin, and Lermontov, and all of them, they actually participated in this process of colonization. So this is something that is very deep-rooted in this kind of people. So if we want to do something about it, we should change the curriculums, we should talk about it, and decolonize everything, basically, which is a long process, and which is impossible to achieve without cooperation with all kind of institutions. And right now, I believe it's easier somehow to work with Turkish people, because this kind of work about recognition of Armenian genocide was being done like for almost a century. But with Azeri people, it's much more complicated. They are more brainwashed, and there is less freedom, even less than in Turkey, for example, which is also kind of a dictatorship, and the situation for Kurdish people is horrible. And I'm also, as an Armenian, I'm trying to speak out on these issues as well, and trying to build alliances with other oppressed people, such as Kurdish people, Pontic Greeks, Assyrians, and yeah. So I think it's really important for us to work together, and these issues are very much connected, because all these empires, they always used minorities and different indigenous groups, and they made us fight. And the solution of this, if we want to build a better region, it's really important for us to start working together.
Thank you.
I have one question for you. It's maybe a complicated question, so I don't know. What do you do if you are in solidarity with an oppressed group and this oppressed group is not in solidarity with you, or they don't show up in the same way? Like, I'm thinking, for example, this year, like so many people were like in my surroundings who are involved in Palestine solidarity activism. They were calling on the EBU, like the European Broadcasting Union, to throw Israel out so that Israel cannot participate in Eurovision anymore. And nobody, literally nobody, talked about Azerbaijan participating in Eurovision. And I wanted to ask you, like, people just don't know and don't care enough to talk about it in a way. And I wanted to ask you, how do you feel about this? How do you deal with this as well?
For me, it's more about human rights and some general principles that I'm fighting for. I'm speaking out more about Armenians because I have more knowledge, but for me, it's not just about my own identity, it's about justice. So yeah, that's why for example, I organized protest with Bashkort activists, like it's a colonized group, a Turkic group actually in Russia, and some of these people, they are also supporting some kinds of Turkish imperialism, but when they were repressed, and they are indigenous group in Russia. So it was really important for me to support, because I know that not like a lot of activists, they are actually my friends, and I kind of feel empathy towards them. And also same with Palestinians. I don't know, it doesn't matter for me whether they support me or not, and it's really hard to expect for them to support me, because they are like living like going through a genocide, and I don't expect them to support me back, but it's really important for me to stop all genocides, and I believe that all genocides are somehow connected. And yeah, probably less people know about the Armenian genocide, but I think if we want to build like a just future, we need to have some kind of rules. So like international law should be like something that is followed by everyone. And yeah, Armenian case is kind of a litmus test for different kind of groups, I also believe, because for example, Turkish president is also speaking out against the genocide in Palestine, but then they don't even recognize Armenian genocide, which is quite hypocritical. Yeah, it's kind of like this hypocrisy in the world is very disappointing, but also some people they show some kind of consistency, then you can get more trust from public. Then maybe you can try to promote this kind of anti-genocide ideas on the global stage, which is I hopefully will happen. But I also think that before that, probably the situation will get worse because, yeah, Russia started the war in Ukraine, and then many other horrible things happened. And I think our radicalization of climate movement and radicalization of activists is something that is very necessary these days.
Thank you. Merit.
Yeah, I have one more question. Like, in terms of like the media representation, are there, because you said like social media is, it's kind of difficult to find proper sources, especially if like either people are not talking about it at all, like it's just not on the agenda, or as you said, how like Azerbaijan is using this like mirror propaganda of like just spreading basically the opposite beliefs or like fake news. And I don't know, are there any, like from Armenia, any like citizen journalism approaches? I remember like I had a course in college about alternative media systems and the global south, where it was like examples of different countries that had, like it was Iran, Brazil, like different approaches to on Palestine as well. Like there was, for example, like a documentary made by just a normal guy basically filming his life and making a documentary to show how Israel like basically destroyed his homeland. And I don't know, just wondering how can I or how can we get more information that we can trust from Armenia? Are there any structures in place, networks, any media that we can trust? Because I think if I would Google it right now, I probably would not find the proper sources to it.
Yeah, it's a really important question because there are some Armenian media and some of them they are in English, but for example, quite often I disagree with them about some issues that have been reported about eternal Armenian politics, and they are kind of biased and influenced, for example, by Russian Armenian diaspora or American diaspora. So it's kind of complicated. That's why I'm kind of trying to or like share most of the news, the important news by myself. And I feel some kind of I'm doing this media work and there is this vacuum. Yeah, so it's not really easy to find what kind of media to follow, but there are quite a few books about the history of Armenian genocide, and there are some activist projects that are really nice. For example, there is a project that was called Learn for Artsakh, and they have a website, and on their website you actually can download a lot of books for free. Probably, yeah, not super legally, but I don't think anyone going to do anything against you. And they had also an Instagram page, but somehow it was blocked. Yeah, so yeah, there are some activist projects I really like, but not many, unfortunately. And that's why it's really also important for like people from other backgrounds to speak out on these issues, because Armenian people, they don't feel that if they speak out, people will listen and people will care. And that's also the problem, this like situation of a depression. So I hope that more people can start speaking out, so Armenians will feel that there is a climate where people will actually help us to, yeah, to, I don't know, find a way out of this vicious cycle of a genocide.
Okay, thank you. I will try find the pages. Thank you, Thomas, also for sending them. The first step to get involved with this.
I'm also learning a lot about different kind of struggles, and I think like if every person will try at least to, yeah, do some bare minimum, then maybe it will be easier for all of us, because obviously there are many kind of horrible things happening in the world, and everyone should do their part.
Other questions, comments, anything you want to say, Tanai?
Yes, hello. I just wanted to add maybe to the sources thing. By the way, I'm a Greek, and just like your great grandmother, mine was also genocided and exiled from Turkey, modern day Turkey, by the post. And on the sources thing, actually, I was researching some books, and I found there is one book that seemed like very good on from what I read regarding like the Greek genocide in specific done by Turkey. And then I saw that it was written by two Israeli writers and researchers. I think they were researching it kind of as like an agenda of like, oh, look at this genocide over there. That's so bad. I researched like what they have released or what they think about Palestine, for example. Nothing. Sometimes you get, I think, in these very weird areas, try to learn over like what is the writer or the author or the researcher like thinking. I keep trying to find them, and especially for also for Armenia and for Assyrian genocides, because our genocides are very immediately connected. They were kind of done with the same perpetrators. I'm still in the lookout for them, and I think I will be able to find some. If anyone is interested, I can forward them to you, and I think also we will have like collectively more. But thank you for the talk today. It's really lovely.
Yeah, actually, like I know some Ponti Greek activists, and like quite often I collaborate with them on my Instagram. And if you follow me, you can find some of their work, and they also sometimes share some recommendation of what to read on because these genocides, they have been committed not against only Armenians, but also against Ponti Greeks, Syrians, and Yazidis. Yeah.
Anything else you want to share or ask before I send you into the reflection rooms?
Yeah, I have a question. Can you give us like one suggestion for a film that talks about Armenia? It doesn't have to be on genocide, but I think like anything that can get people like just hooked on or interested in the culture, food, etc.
There was this movie, I think it's called My Rick. I can try to find, like, I don't know if Thomas, you can send a link later if I find it later, but yeah, it was called My Rick. It's kind of connected. It's about the story of survivors of the genocide who fled to, I think, France. And then also there was this another short movie about, it was called Aurora, I think, and it was about girl or woman that survived the genocide. She fled to the US, and then a movie was filmed about her, and the movie actually was lost at some point, and then she was forgotten. But then this kind of new modern movie was about how they found it, and also this really touching story of a girl that was talking about genocide so much that she like fainted at some point at these events, and then like so, and also about this kind of promises of Western world to help to Armenians, and somehow then at some point these policies change, and then they just give up on this, which was a tragedy for Armenian people. And then they start negotiations with Turkey, and so I don't know, this movie was also great. And I don't know, maybe I can collect some and send it to you later, if that's okay.
Wilbert has a question in the chat. Wilbert wrote, Arshak, how did you relate the situation in Nagorno-Karabakh with your own identity? You mentioned it as something important, although you're fighting, of course, for human rights in general.
Yeah, as I mentioned, my grandparents are from Nakhchivan, so it was a region that was given to Azerbaijan, same way as Nagorno-Karabakh was given, and same happened to my grandparents, not the same, but like deportation and ethnic cleansing, and in different way. But my grandma was telling me about Nakhchivan that I cannot even visit today, unfortunately. And I always, I didn't take it seriously when I was a kid, when my grandma was telling me about it. But then when the blockade was happening, I somehow started thinking about it. And that it's kind of not probably okay that I cannot visit my own indigenous lands. I don't know, when you are a kid, you somehow accept this reality and you don't think what you can do about it. And now I'm trying to speak out more about it, but it's kind of a dream that we will be able to return to these lands. And especially in the context of Azerbaijan, because we even cannot visit it.
Okay. If there's no more question or comment in the big room, this is the last opportunity. Then I would slowly go towards the end part. Arshak, thank you so much for sharing all of this, for sharing all of your wisdom with us and your strategic knowledge as well, and for being here with us. And I hope we can keep collaborating and yeah. Raising more awareness about this topic. That we have two upcoming talks in the next months. One will be about Congo and the genocide, ongoing genocide there, and will be about Kashmir. Keep following us. We will publish these calls soon. And now I'm publishing a link in the chat about there's kind of like an evaluation link where you can add your own perspective on how this talk was for you. And I will put you in a breakout room so you can reflect with other people who were here about what you just heard. Feel free to just have a conversation with the other people here. That's it.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. It was really nice to talk with all of you. And yeah, if you have any more questions, just you can text me on Instagram and I'm trying to answer to people.
Thank you so much for joining. Enjoy the breakout rooms.